Welcome back. We are joined today by Stanislav Krapivnik, a former U.S. Army officer and military analyst, originally from Donbass. So thank you for coming on. I wanted to ask you about the rapidly changing situation in Ukraine, which appears to be changing in a very big way. But first, let me ask about the war against Iran, because, well, as you know, everything is interconnected. So I was wondering how you see the Iran war impacting Russia and indeed, by extension, the war in Ukraine.
Well, let's begin with right now. Today is the big cry of hypocrisy from the West is, oh my God, Russia is giving out satellite coordinates to where our bases and ships are to Iran for targeting. Yeah, well, welcome to getting it as good as you give it. And I'm sure the Chinese, but the Chinese are doing, of course the Chinese are doing, they got twice as many satellites and they got their Baodu system in power. I guess they can't really piss off both Russia and China too much. But the look, Russia has flooded a lot of equipment, and though nobody has admitted to this, but I will say this because I'm pretty damn sure, but this is my opinion. It's not a official government line. So I'm not speaking for Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. But I guarantee you that those the pilots in those MiG-29s and MiG-30 and Su-35s and the people running the control center in the S-400s, which are still being husbanded, are not Iranians. It takes much longer than 4 or 5 months to get pilots up to speed. And you really can't retrain pilots from older platforms to new platforms. They'll always be second class. Muscle memory, things like that. It's different aerodynamics. Not like jumping from an old tank to a newer model tank. That's still wide on tracks on ground. This is a very different thing because of aerodynamics. I guarantee you those are Russians. And yesterday's shocking discovery was there are Russian chips inside the Iranian drones. And yes, we're using the last of our washing machines, dryers, and telephones to pull those chips out. Yeah, that as much as you tell the Europeans, oh yeah, we actually print our own chips, we can do that. We have those technologies. No, you're just white semi-smart apes. You can't do that. That's you're in the jungle. You're incapable of doing that. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Well, welcome to the drones whacking at the U.S. military. Yes, there are Russian chips all over those drones. And if you noticed, the American Lucas drone, which is an exact copy of a Garand 3, and before that, the U.S. Premiered its similar drone back in June, which is just a copy of the Shihad, the original Shihad first generation drones. So they're not exactly creating anything new. Which, by the way, with well, on the subject of drones, to get the whole Caucasus up in flames, which they're doing very well right now. Well, first of all, even though they're Shia, Aliyev is power hungry, not exactly the brightest star in the sky, far from what his father was. He's got a very power-hungry and not exactly brightest star either wife and her clan that really want a war to annex parts of Iran, which is going to get Azerbaijan destroyed. They've also been pushing Azerbaijani nationalism in Dagestan, where they're 5% of population. They haven't said they're 5% of population. They're probably the biggest one single minority, not counting Russians, in Dagestan, because Dagestan has 30 different ethnic groups living there. But they're still 5% of population, but they're pushing, this is all our land, this is not your land, this ultra-nationalism. And into Russian schools where the majority are Azerbaijanis, really pissing the locals, the rest of the 95% of the locals off. Not the smartest move, but they're doing it. And I think, these drones that flew in, this all goes back to a topic I pulled up from my sources in Georgia, who are in the Georgian government, or around the Georgian government. A month ago, a little over a month ago, the Georgian government allowed American military planes free access to Georgian airspace. 4 C-130s in 2 days landed for, quote, refueling in Tbilisi airport. What was loaded or unloaded, nobody knows. well, okay, somebody knows, but it's not been disclosed. And also these Shahid-type drones appear out of nowhere, strike the airport in Azerbaijan, which the Iranians would never have a reason to do. Why would they do that? If any strike a military post, there's an Israeli post there. And Azerbaijan has declared, they've declared that this is a terrorist attack, and the Iranians, we have nothing to do with this. We have no reason to do this. You know, what is it? It's not Arkham's. No, Arkham is Lovecraft. The Razor. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's the theory of who has the most to gain. I can't remember the name of the author of the theory, the Razor. I didn't want to say Arkham, but Arkham was a made up town in Lovecraftian stories. Okay, so we'll go past that. Sorry. We're all tired. I know that. I'm running 3-4 hours of sleep for the last couple of days, so it does impair thinking a little bit. Well, the Azerbaijanis have declared that this is a terrorist attack. We will seek vengeance. Have mobilized their military and have recalled their embassy. Which I think if they do this, we may see the end of Azerbaijan as a nation of any kind, especially considering the sole source of revenue for Azerbaijan is oil. And having been to Azerbaijan many times in Baku, because I used to, I was director of supply chain for Halliburton, a regional director of supply chain for Eurasia. I'd go there to see my people working there. And on the south side of the peninsula, you have Baku. On the north side, across this little hill range, you have offshore all the oil rigs, and you have all the offices and things like that, and expensive housing primarily for expats. So that it's all, you know, offshore and not far away. Plus, you have the oil pipeline going through right along the Iranian border, which can easily be taken out. So if they really want to, I mean, if Iran hits back hard enough just with drones, Azerbaijan won't have a money source. They'll probably have a revolution because the economy will collapse. Once the oil's gone, there is no other economy in Azerbaijan outside of agrarian. And, you know, and if they keep pushing the Russian markets close again to them, then they'll totally collapse because they'll have absolutely nothing left. But again, Aliyev seems to be very hell-bent on being Ukraine 2.0. Ukraine 2.0 stuck between Russia and Iran and dissing both of them off as much as possible for his American and Israeli owners. And then I'm hearing from Georgia that the Israelis are there trying to really shake the situation up and try to get a war going with the Georgians toward Russia. So they're trying to light up everything and everybody around them. Just like the missile that was heading toward Turkey was some mystery missile that appeared out of nowhere. So, you know, and Iranians said, we didn't fire against Turkey. So the Americans are trying to do desperately to try to get the whole region into flames because they can't defeat Iran. America is running out of missiles, defensive missiles first. Offensive missiles will go quite a bit sooner. I think they're hitting Iran right now with JDAMs, which are glide bombs. They're definitely hitting them with missiles. Well, I mean, they are hitting them with missiles, but I think the Tomahawks are probably going to be starting to run out soon. So that's a situation there right now. Iran has done an excellent job of de-Americanizing the Gulf. And Russia needs to thank Iran because the $1 billion radar system that Iran took out of Bahrain is the radar system that saw into southern Russia. And the Ukrainians were getting coordinates to hit Russian civilian shipping in Astrakhan and those areas from this radar. It's gone. And the secondary radar in Qatar is gone. And most of these, Iran has hit 22 American bases, including American occupation bases in Iraq, which are now under fire also from Shia militia in Iraq, because Iraq's been demanding American leave for the last 10 years. The U.S. is being going, whatever. So that's one of those issues. So I think the region's going to go still a lot further. Israel's taken massive damage. There's reports of public unrest because the areas that they said were safe is not safe. There's something like 200 buildings have been destroyed inside of Tel Aviv, and they're coming in constantly. And the Israelis are screaming about war crimes. The Israelis are screaming about war crimes. The people committing genocide on all their neighbors except for Jordan so far and Egypt are screaming about war crimes. So, the hypocrisy is rank, but the American missiles, defensive missiles, they not only are there not enough of them, or even nearly enough of them, the production rates are subpar. And they can't expand it without building new facilities, which is something amazing that Americans haven't done that to Patriot missiles, considering how bad they needed Patriot missiles to feed their Ukrainian proxies. Never mind all their other proxies around the world and vassals. The Americans are producing about 35 to 40 Patriot PAC-3 missiles a day. A month. And about 10 THAAD missiles a month, which is absolutely nothing, as you know. So, no, and by the way, China has also cut off the U.S. from dual-use rare earth magnets, to the point that the newer F-35s, there's even a video that came out with it, they don't have the radars up front because there's no magnets for those radars. So to counterbalance the weight loss from that, there was a video came out that was taken where American the military was welding weight plates underneath the nose cone to keep the balance, the avionics balance, because of the loss or the lack of that radar system in the newer planes. So this is going to get very interesting very, very quickly. And by the way, Tomahawks are also constructed manual. And the reason they're constructed manual is because of how the U.S. handles a lot of these contracts with the corporations for equipment. It's called cost plus. So whatever the cost is, plus your profit margin. So if it's a 10% profit margin, the item costs $100, you charge us $110, and you get your $10 profit. Well, the incentive there is to make it as expensive as possible. And you can't make it any more expensive than putting it together by hand. All those missiles are literally put together by hand. They can't stamp them out. There's only a limited amount of what you can do. So yeah, that's the U.S. is going very badly with this. It didn't plan it, obviously enough. Politico even had an article out that it's just as if the Americans just woke up one morning and decided to have a war. and well, they didn't decide to have a war. The Israelis decided to have a war. And wherever the master goes, the slave will follow very closely. And we learned that from Marco and Johnson when they put out the soup sandwich, or word sandwich, I'm sorry, I'm not going to phrase it. Word salad is what I'm trying to say, about why they went there. But if you boil it all down and both of them basically said the same thing. Well, we weren't really planning to attack Iran, but the Israelis are going, and we had no choice. So, okay, so we know who the master is in this relationship.
Yeah, I saw Speaker Mike Johnson make a speech where he made a point that America hasn't gone to war. It's they just went in very limited, and then Iran declared war on them. So if you really think about it, Iran is the aggressor here. This is it's kind of amazing to say. But regarding what you said about the false flag, though, it is interesting because Iran, it doesn't shy away. It has, with pride taken responsibility for all the attacks on all the Gulf states and all the American bases and everything else it hits. But then on the 2 or 3 targets, which makes no sense at all, which would be completely reckless, this would be, yes, Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, and then this missile heading towards Turkey, where Iran says, this is not us. And, they called Saudi Arabia saying this attack on your oil fields, not us. They didn't shy away from saying we attacked Qatari and United Emirates energy facilities. So it's worth asking why why the targets which makes no sense would they deny when they say that they take responsibility for the rest? So I assume that there's a good chance this is, as you say, a false flag. Indeed, the U.S. and Israel, when they haven't achieved their objective of this quick regime change, and it draws into a long war, they need foot soldiers, and they're not going to put boots on the ground themselves, not yet at least. And they already
Well, Exit really wants to.
what? Yeah.
Exit really wants to put American boots on the ground. I don't know where the hell he's going to get those boots from, but he really, really wants to.
Yeah, I read some Israeli politicians as well saying we haven't ruled out Americans putting boots on the ground. So that's an interesting name framing.
Minister, what's his name? Gallant? Gallant?
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. We haven't ruled anything.
But they're very open already. They're already trying to mobilize Kurdish forces or minorities. So did they already say we want to get foot and boots on the ground? We would like to use proxies. So yeah, and again, it's not that different from the Ukraine war when the Georgian prime minister and his predecessor both say that well, what's driving Western policy toward Georgia these days is regime change to open a second front on Russia. So you know, I think this is reasonable.
So, first of all, as Tucker himself, by the way, mentioned for his sources, and it's been mentioned in the local press, Israeli agents were arrested in Saudi Arabia planning explosives, and they were arrested one other country. But look, you already got, first of all, it's a coalition against a coalition, because you already have, to begin with, Iraq, and you have Hezbollah, and you have Yemen. And Yemen's been keeping a kind of a lower profile right now. Everybody's waiting for the U.S. to run out of interceptor missiles. Just so the audience understands the level of interceptor missiles. So the THAAD originally had something like 480 missiles produced for 7 batteries. 2 batteries went to Saudi Arabia. They've been destroyed. The THAAD has a very good over-the-horizon radar, but it's bright. It's incredibly bright. So it draws all the attention of the radar, and if in combat, the last thing you want to do is draw attention, because those that draw more attention get more service. Servicing a target means just shooting at it and blowing it up. So it's a nice way of saying it's like we don't kill, we terminate the enemy. No, we kill them. We blow them up in little pieces. It's the same damn thing. It gets serviced. It gets destroyed. It gets shot at. So those 2 radars are gone, and that's $1 billion something each, by the way, while we're at it. But the problem was post the 12th-day war, the U.S. used up something like 1/3 of its THAAD interceptor missiles. And the THAAD interceptor missile is a piece of crap. It's a $12 million piece of crap. It's a project that lingered around for 20 years and wouldn't die. Plenty of attempts to kill it. Plenty of senators had, they needed the pork for their states. So it wouldn't die. The military tried to kill it numerous times. It just wouldn't die. And finally, it actually was given birth. It uses 1950s, 1960s technology, concept technology, in that normally when you fire an interceptor missile, so here's the problem. You can't hit a cruise, you can't hit a hypersonic missile. Ballistic missiles go almost at the same speeds, but they're on a parabolic arc. So if you see it coming, your radar picks it up. It sees the speed, the arc that it's coming in. Your computer will quickly pull out a formula and pop out about the coordinate and time that this missile will be on an inbound course. And you pop something in its way that's supposed to intercept it on its parabolic arc because, plus or minus maybe wind factor, wind shear factors, but the missile's basically going on a predictable trajectory. Hypersonics don't. They maneuver. So it's almost impossible for a computer system. I guess if it had enough missiles, but I mean, how many missiles is enough missiles? Never mind. If the S-550 can do it because it's popping out of the tube going Mach 1, and it accelerates to Mach 13, so it can actually match speeds. But the way most interceptor missiles work, and all of these are subsonic interceptor missiles, the way they work is they get close enough to a target. The target's here, they get somewhere around here, maybe up front is the best, and they explode. And this cloud of shrapnel, small pieces are going at a high rate, plus the missile speed, and they just rip the missile or the plane to pieces. That's how it normally works. But the older technology before that was to hit the missile with a missile, and that's what the THAAD is. It's trying to do bullet-to-bullet contact. So it literally has to strike the enemy missile instead of just blowing up in the vicinity and taking it out by damaging it. No, it has to actually strike. Bullet hits bullet. It's crap. They don't work. They're horrible. There's 2 Patriot missiles for PAC-3 Patriot missiles for 1 THAAD missile at this point. And they're being produced 10 missiles at a time. Well, the 2 batteries that went into Israel, they had 192 missiles. That's it. And there are 70 others in other locations for the U.S. and about 100 something that were bought by the Arabs, which are probably used up already too. There are no more interceptor missiles for the THAADs. That's it. They're gone. They're done. In a month, you'll get 10 missiles, about 2.5 missiles a week. And then you got the Patriots are not much better. You're producing about 35, 40 missiles a month. And there's about 1,000 missiles that came into this. So if you're looking at 2 missiles per target on average, then you get what? You get 500 targets, which is not much. But then you get examples of, I put in one of my update videos, the video of I don't know what generation ballistic missile this was, but it was a base ballistic missile. It wasn't even going that fast. Definitely no hypersonic. And it's flying in 11 Patriot missiles launched. They all miss. And it's somewhere in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. $66 million just flew off in every direction. And by the way, those missiles will land somewhere too. And they do have an explosive warhead, and they have fuel in there. And though everything goes up, comes down, and we're shooting them over cities, they come back down over that city. So they'll blow something else up too while they're landing. It's kind of the way, the nature of things, gravity. So right now it's phase 2. Phase 1 was when you were using cheap equipment to take out cheap older missiles and drones to blind the enemy. So they took out the radars. And what amazed me, honestly speaking, when the Qatari radar ball was taken out, it was taken out by an old Shahed drone. And they're slow. Let's begin with that. They're loud. So you can hear that little moped engine. Bah, 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 bah. And it's flying. And somebody's taken the video from about, I would say, probably a kilometer away from a high-story building. And the thing just, bah, 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 bah. Nobody's firing on it. No machine gun fire. No assault rifle fire. No javelins. Stingers going up, no point defense systems, nothing. And this thing is going slow. It's just, and this is the American base. If this was the Russian base, it'd still be the Russians running around with assault rifles trying to shoot the damn thing down. No American soldiers anywhere, or at least anywhere that they're armed to try to take down something that slow and hitting something and destroying something that expensive and critical for American defense systems. So they blinded them. Now they're just using slightly maybe more newer systems to drain the resources out of the U.S. military and Israelis for defensive missile fire. And then, and only then are you going to get the really expensive stuff coming in. The hypersonics, the high-end ballistic missiles, when there's nothing that can be fired up to take them out, outside of maybe F-16s firing air-to-air missiles, or F-15s firing air-to-air missiles. So it's all ahead. Everything is still ahead. And the U.S., it's being estimated somewhere, the Chinese are publishing photographs of all the damage. The American companies have at least a 92-hour delay before they'll publish, so you can't really get a fast estimate. The Chinese are publishing live, the damages to all these facilities. Their estimates are ranging between $100 and $150 billion in damage. Just along the Gulf Coast, just the Gulf Coast.
Well, you mentioned before Russia probably offering intelligence, and I don't know, as you said, I don't know why this would come as a big shock. Indeed, that's why I wanted to ask about the Russian involvement here, because when the West got so deeply involved in this proxy war in Ukraine, I was warning because, the West engages in everything. It's hardly even a proxy war. They supply weapons, the military planning, the intelligence, the targeting. They even have contractors to pull that trigger. So my warning was that the NATO countries tend to go to war quite often. So we could end up in a situation where, the tables are turned, and suddenly the Russians could then respond in the same way. And now, of course, we see that some Europeans are considering entering the war, then primarily the UK and France. And Iran has already warned that Europe would become a legitimate target. Now, my first thought when I heard that was after, years of European countries striking into Russia. I think about, the invasion of Kursk, when you had all those German generals come on TV saying how wonderful this is. This is, this is where the Russians won in the Second World War. Now they will, be humiliated, all this kind of stuff. I was thinking, if a situation ever appear in the future when the Russians have the opportunity to essentially return the favor, then, it's a good chance they might. And again, this seems like such a scenario. So was just wondering how you look at this. How likely do you think that the Russians would then essentially supply some long-range missiles, some intelligence, some strike data, and saying, well, here is where you want to press this button and it will hit here? Do you see, not to oversimplify, but do you see anything like this developing?
Again, I do not represent the Russian government, nor do I speak for the Russian government. Hell yes, 100%, and they deserve what they get. Look, and it's, by the way, my relative's getting shot up for 12 years on the Donbass, so yes, I have a lot of dogs in this fight. That they're surprised and shocked. Of course, Russia's giving information. It'd be insane not to give information. Iran is not going to fall. Iran will not fall. If Iran falls, the Caucasus falls, the Central Asia falls, and a lot of other things fall. U.S. is not going to get its grubby hands on Iran. That's it. The U.S. is a genocidal regime. We see what it's doing. The reason it's blowing up civilians right now is the same thing the U.S. always does when it runs out of targets. And it's running out of targets not because it's destroyed Iran's anti-air systems and everything else. It's because it can't find them. It did the same thing in Yugoslavia to the Serbs. When they couldn't find the military because the military dissolved into the mountains, said, we're waiting for you. Come and get us. Oh, okay. Well, then we'll go blow up women and children because, those don't run as fast and they don't hide as well and they can't shoot back. This is the same typical thing that the U.S. is doing right now. It's committing genocide. It has always committed genocide. I'm not even going to go to deep history. Okay, let's do a little deeper history. The Philippines. We're not even going to talk about the American Indians. Let's talk about the Philippines. When the U.S. took the Philippines from Spain, officially, was it General Smith, I think, was the one that was in charge of the Philippines. He said 50% of the population has to be exterminated for us to pacify the Philippines. They only killed 20% of the Philippine population. Most Filipinos don't know their own history because they're not taught that in schools by a subservient government that answers to the Americans. 20% of the population, relocation camps, concentration camps, mass genocide, to break the Filipino back because the Filipinos were promised liberty, and it said they got a master that was much worse. The Spanish at least looked at them as co-human beings. The Americans wrote about them as half devil, half child that has to be put down. As General Smith and Roosevelt wrote him a letter thanking him for his great work in the Philippines. As he put it, any boy over 12 is going to be our enemy, so we have to kill her. That was the American approach in the Philippines. Plus, the Filipinos are Asians. Oh, and they're Catholics. They're not real human beings, for that matter. Not to the evangelicals. Neither are we Orthodox, for that matter. They did the same thing to the Germans. Out of 6 million German civilians killed during World War II, 5 million were killed by the U.S. and British firebombing at every single German city. Everyone remembers Dresden. Every German city was from. They killed about 70,000 French by burning French villages. And they didn't even have any Germans in it. For whatever reason, I guess they wanted to smack one upside their ally Charles de Gaulle's head for whatever reason. They didn't even bomb Paris when Paris was already empty of Germans, and that was an open city. If anybody doesn't believe me, look up the historical documents. It's not hard to find. I wrote a dissertation on the firebombing of German cities. It was assigned to me. I got a 3 on it because my military instructor didn't like my my conclusions, not because of the quality of the work. I didn't even know that subject until I started reading up on it. Went, holy crap. Mosul, destroyed. Aleppo, when they were fighting in there, destroyed. Mosul, to free it from the very IGIL, Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call it, that America feeds and created and put in power in Syria, they wiped the city out. They just bombed the city, killed half the population of the city, and put a flag on it and said, it's freed. They've done the same thing. They did the shock and awe inside Iraq, in Yugoslavia, when they couldn't find targets. So they hitting the hospitals, schools, markets. 2 trains that they took out on bridges, and they claimed that the trains were just speeding along and they just appeared as the missile come. It turned out later that they sped the film up 4 times. And when you look at these trains, they're like 1940s steam locomotives. How would they fly? You know, this is a steam locomotive. It's not going to fly. Sorry. You have to call it on that. And a lot of people did. And they do it all the damn time. So to say that, and they do it because they get frustrated. They believe in breaking people's backs. It never works, because even if you hate the government, it's not the government that's killing your children. It's those guys that are killing your children. And the government's the only thing that could save you or your children. And you're going to rally around that government. You're going to rally around the flag, and you become an ultra-nationalist because your children are dying. Which, by the way, Ukraine did the same thing by American instruction in the Donbass. The Donbass would have gone very differently, not counting Crimea, particularly in Lugansk and Donetsk. There weren't that many people actually out ready to fight. They didn't want the government. They wanted federalization, the right to elect their governors, a right to have a say in where their money went, that Kiev was just stealing blind and not investing a penny back into those provinces. But they weren't ready to fight. But what the Ukrainians did was they just started shooting at everything and everybody. And, at least for an average Russian man, if he doesn't want to fight, when he sees his wife or kids or his cousins or his neighbor's kids getting killed, he's got to take a rifle in his hands and he's going to go for vengeance. And the Iranians are no different. You think the fathers of the 165 little girls that are murdered, massacred by the U.S. military are just going to lay their weapons down? They will never lay those weapons down. They will go for revenge until they die, to get revenge against the people that murdered their families. They've, in Tehran last night, I think the casualty rate went up to 1,000 killed. Hospitals, 13 hospitals and clinics were hit. They go specifically after you start. They destroyed a really beautiful stadium in the middle of Tehran, just wiped it out. Why? Because they've hit UNESCO. Heritage sites. Why? Because that's how they fight. They try to destroy the country to the foundation. And the Israelis really want to destroy the country to the foundation. Want to destroy every country in that area to the foundation. Look what they're doing in Lebanon. And the Christians in Beirut thought that they were going to sit this out, that Hezbollah fight. Well, now the Christian sections of Beirut are getting hit too by the Israelis. So the Christian militias there are going to have to choose, either run or stand and fight. And I think they'll stand and fight, even though they're not all that strong. But when you push these people into a corner thinking that you can exterminate them with glee, well, yeah, they do have a tendency of fighting back. And then the West is always shocked when it gets smacked in the head by the people that they're trying to murder. Oh, how dare you fight back? Even that's worse than the Nazis of the 40s. The Nazis of the 40s expected you to fight back. They just thought, we're the superior race, we'll beat you. But these exceptional people don't expect you to even fight back. You have no right to fight back. That's why they said, and Iran did everything correct in this, absolutely. Because the U.S. approach is, well, we couldn't kill you off one time, so we'll put a cork in it for a couple of months or half a year, maybe a year, and then we'll come back again. And constantly they're trying to undermine the government. And Iran warned them, we're not going to hold back. If you hit even a small strike, we're going all out. And the U.S., of course, knowing everything and everybody without ever having any plans or knowledge of anybody or anything, because they're all little brown people over there. I guess they're all Arabs or whatever. Who cares about whatever Persians? But what's the difference? Believe you me, a lot of them think that way. I served in staffs, and they have no concept of differences in nationalities. It's all run by stereotypes and ignorant stereotypes, extremely ignorant stereotypes. And you start explaining to people the differences here and there, their eyes cloud up, they roll up in their heads, and they don't hear you. They don't care. It's irrelevant information. Just tell me when to drop the bomb. That's the beginning and the end of the whole conversation. and the Iranians are not going to fall apart, and the Azeris are not going to go over to Azerbaijan. In fact, the Azeris and the Persians are very close in the society. And Khamenei, one of the previous presidents of Iran, was Azeri Khamenei. They're Azeris. So the Azeris actually hold quite high levels of power in Persia or Iraq. I'm sorry, Iran. So this is a whole different level. And even the Kurds, flat out said, there's no combat here. They're not. This is just American. It's like Bloomberg about, the Indians aren't buying Russian oil anymore. The Russian economy's collapsed and all the other. They're trying to shape events by lying. And the Kurds have said, we stand for peace. We're not going to. There is no combat in here. They're trying to get the Kurds of Syria to go in and fight for a homeland in Iran right after they betrayed the Kurds of Syria and had them massacred by the Turks and by the Al-Qaeda terrorists that are now running the show in Syria. Those people aren't dumb either. They're not automatons that are just going to go fight. They know who's killed their women and children. Those are the Americans. In this case, America backstabbed everybody around there at the moment that was convenient. Oh, same thing the British do all the time. There's an old saying for the British: it's better to be an enemy of England than a friend. At least the enemy knows who stands against them. And it's the same thing, by the way. And even if it happened, the Turks would then have to go into Kurdistan because they'll never allow an independent Kurdish entity on their border because it'll be a horrible thing for them. So these uprisings aren't going to happen. At most, there may be some groups of terrorists or very small groupings, but it's not going to be any mass uprising. Iran has a huge army. And Hegseth is a psychopath. The Christian Zionists are heretics. Somebody may hate me for saying that, but they are. They're dispensationalist heretics. A heresy that came up in 1833, if I remember correctly, John Darby popped that out of nowhere. Well, I could say where he popped it out of, but children may be listening to this program. It's this dispensationalism in Christian theology from the very beginning. The Jews were those that followed Christ, whether they were Hebrews or Gentiles. They were the Jews that followed Christ, and the Jerusalem on the ground is just stones. What you're aiming for is the spiritual Jerusalem, the Jerusalem, the heavenly kingdom. So the dispensationalists and the Scofield Bible that came out that taught them what they're supposed to think when they're reading the Bible, it changed and skewed everything. And they're aiming for that Armageddon. They want the end of the world. But they need, to get Armageddon, they need the third temple. To get a third temple, they need an ethnically pure and religiously pure Israel. And before that, they need an Israel to begin with. So you're dealing with people that are very sick in their heads. You saw that, I don't remember her name, the head of the faith office for Trump. Her unit show.
I don't know her name, but I saw that video. That's.
And then she strikes, and she's doing it for like 3-4 minutes. And the angels come and kill him. And you look at it, my God, these people are psychotic. And I grew up around a lot of these people. They are literally psychotic.
Well, it's not a good look when you're making a case that you have to defeat the theological enemy because it's too extreme. So no, it's not a good look at all. But let a little bit, we'll have a little bit of time left. Shift just a bit focus back to the Ukraine issue because there's now talk about a possible Russian spring offensive coming up, and it looks as if there's a possibility of now swallowing up both Slavyansk and Kramatorsk in some kind of a big cauldron. Again, this will be the remaining parts of Donetsk, which would then put all of Donbass under Russian control, which is quite significant. I was wondering, did you see the cauldron forming there? And also, with the attack on Iran, how do you see this impacting diplomacy? Because the Russians seem to be getting, not fed up with, but they feel like they're being, that there's no serious negotiations, essentially. That's, the very clear signals coming out of Moscow.
Look, again, the head of the government, Vladimir Vladimirovich, they're still, I mean, Witkoff is going to come back into the White House, I mean, to the Kremlin, believe you. They'll let him in. I don't know how much they'll listen to him. Because even as a bag man, he's proven to be a lout. He wasn't able to, they counter, at least we can bribe him with business deals and get him to calm down. But no, that hasn't worked either. There's massive anger inside Russia. I'm not talking about the man on the street. I'm talking about the officers that I know, a lot of the politicians that I know, and myself at it. The point is, look, and there's going to be a lot more pressure on the government to act, not act the way it's been acting, but act decisively. And decisively, I don't mean in Ukraine, just in Ukraine. I'm talking about NATO bases along the Russian or the Ukrainian border that are feeding Ukraine. I'm talking about Estonia. Because, look, the example is quite simple. Iran has beaten the crap out of, they've destroyed 22 American bases. They're shooting down F-15s. They're hitting American forces. There's one Arleigh Burke destroyer that's been, it's grainy photos, but it's been hit. And the targeting was handed over by some satellite, we don't know which, to the Iranians while it was refueling. Whether or not the Lincoln was hit or not, I don't know. But it's 2,000 kilometers away out of range, which makes it a combat ineffective because the planes would have to be refueled twice just to get to the edge of their firing zone and come back. All of that is an example. And World War III didn't start it. No nuclear war started. And the point here is, why the hell aren't we doing the same or worse? We can do whatever we want. We've got the capability to strike everything in NATO if we wanted to. And I guarantee you one thing, the U.S. will never, under any circumstances, surrender New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Washington, or any other city, or even Oklahoma City, for London, for Warsaw, for Paris, or any other European city. If it comes to a nuclear war, the U.S. will not get involved unless it's being shot at itself. Because the Europeans are vassals, they're meat, and they are expendable. Whether they want to admit it or not, and I don't think most Europeans still egotistically want to admit that they are meat that will be surrendered to the meat grinder of war sooner or later by the Americans. They are second class. Their leadership is bought and paid for or raised in America, and they all have positions waiting for them in America in some think tank, and Europe is expendable. And most Europeans egotistically don't want to understand that. I understand. You've taught all your life that you're the center of humanity and civilization and everything that's right in the world. And you don't want to admit that, but actually you're just used material that your betters, your owners across the Atlantic are more than happy to expend. Look, the first, America calls World War II the Good War. Not because they were fighting Hitler. And you know what the article "the" does? And in Slavic language, we don't have articles. But the "the" just underlines the good. The very good war, basically. In Slavic, that's not, I never said that. In the U.S., it's called the Good War, not because they were fighting Hitler. It's the Good War because it raised the U.S. from the Great Depression into the prime economy of the world with 56% of world GDP, more than half of the world's gold reserves, because everybody else whacked each other really, really hard. And it took a while for everybody to get back on their feet. And then eventually the U.S. dropped, I think it's like 16% of GDP, world GDP or something like that, now maybe 20. Well, in 1998 in Forbes, I read the first time an article that said we need another good war. We need to have Europe destroyed so we can rebuild it, sign off our debts, and become creditors again. That was 1998 in Forbes. Yeah, it was an opinion piece. But you know what? If they're talking about it in Forbes, they've already been talking about it for a while. And for the next 30 years, the best I can tell the 28 years, is Europe is being steadily pushed in that direction. They need Europe half dead, destroyed. U.S. is not going to fight in a European-wide war. It's going to become neutral. Yeah, sure, Europe will get an instant European army. It'll be NATO just switching patches to EU. But U.S. isn't going to fight. U.S. is going to sell equipment to make money. And then the U.S. is going to come in there on monopoly contracts to rebuild whatever's left of the Europeans and take whatever they want. That's the whole aim. The Europeans just don't want to admit that. I mean, they are literally standing with one foot hanging over the cliff, and they still don't want to admit that they're about to go into that cliff, off that cliff. I mean, I guess kind of you could almost understand probably some of the Jews heading to the trenches to be shot by the Ukrainian nationalists under tutelage of the SS. We're probably thinking, well, this can't be real. Even as they're walking over the corpses of the previous move. Well, this can't be real. I can't admit it. This can't be real. I think all of Europe is basically that group of Jews walking over the corpses of other parts of Europe getting ready to be shot, and still doesn't want to admit that this can't be real. It's very real. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it may be a vicious way of saying it. It may offend somebody. Well, I'm sorry. Sometimes you just got to smack people with the truth, because if they don't get it any other way, Europe is being led to extermination, or a very good chunk of extermination, by its own politicians, by the owners of those politicians, and by blind stupidity and egotism of the population that doesn't want to admit what's about to happen. Or if they do understand and they're not doing anything about it, I don't know what to call people like that. I mean, if you've got children and you're looking at them and you're knowing what the future is, and you still don't want to get off your arse to do something about it, I mean, you're ruled by Epstein elites. My God, the people eat children. Literally, they eat children. They eat their own children. I mean, well, their own people's children. They won't touch their own, I hope. I don't go that far. I mean, what can you consider from people like that? What can you consider from that kind of an elite? They'll sacrifice anybody. Well, it doesn't matter to them. So Europe, on the Russian side, Russia is, Putin will be under a lot of pressure. Why aren't we doing the same thing? Russia has 350,000 troops it can toss into that, into any part of that front. Ukraine can't stop that. I mean, quite literally, at this point, you could run a tank army right in. Sure, you will suffer heavy casualties the first day or two of operations, but that front will rip. It'll rip almost instantly. There's not enough Ukrainian troops in a lot of those areas. And if you put up the white the white swans, the big strategic bombers, and just literally carpet bomb those areas, you'll go right through that front. There's not enough troops in those fronts. There's enough troops to fight off, small units of 3 or 5 men attacking, sure. But there's not enough to stop a brigade. There's not enough to stop a division barreling down on them, especially if there's carpet bombing ahead of them. Russia can do that. It's not being allowed. The Russian military is not being allowed to do that. How long that happens for, I don't know. Quite literally, if Russia wanted to Gaza any Ukrainian city, it could Gaza any single Ukrainian city without a single problem about it. It could take Bankova and turn it into just one big crater if it wanted to. It doesn't. I don't know why. It's tolerated. Budanov and all of the rest of these should have been dead men walking a long time ago. They're murderous terrorists. And by the way, and you hear that constantly from a lot of people in at least the lower and mid echelons of power. They're very upset about this. How long can we keep the gloves on? I don't know. But Iran is setting a very high bar for Russia. And a lot of people are seeing this, and they're saying, why? Why aren't we doing that? We can. We've got more than enough resources to wipe out half of Europe if we wanted to. We don't want to particularly, but the Europeans seem to be hell-bent on it for whatever idiotic reason. I mean, at least we've cut all gas supplies to Europe. That's 15 to 17% of Europe's gas gone. Because yesterday Peskov said that's it. We've made the decision. No more gas for Europe. Plus, out of the Gulf, you're looking at for Politico and other articles saying and what some of the politicians are saying, it looks like it's going to be a 100+ day war, at least. So at least 100 days, nothing's going out physically. Qatar has switched off the LNG plant. The LNG plant has been damaged, so the damage has to be repaired. Plus, when you're powering up a fully switched off LNG plant, it takes between 2 to 3 weeks to power it up, because you're powering up section at a time, testing to make sure there's no leaks, testing to make sure all the systems work properly, and then you walk down the technological chain to finally get the LNG out the other end. I mean, you've got to dry the gas, you've got to cool the gas, store it, and so on. So you're looking at possibly another 100 days plus another 3 weeks to get the system up if everything is repaired and doesn't get any more damage. And then the time for the ships to get out and back up to Europe, which will be another week and a half to 2 weeks. So you could be looking at another 4 to 5 months of no gas from Qatar. And that's another 20% of Europe's gas. So Europe just basically lost 35% of its gas. Oh, well.
The fact that they're now seriously discussing whether or not to open up with Russia, hoping that Russia will sell, I think this demonstrates how bad things are in the Middle East now with the ability to supply energy. Now, what I hear from what you're saying, though, I hear the same though coming from Moscow, that the anger is really growing, boiling over, and of course, after seeing what happens in Iran, there's many who are also asking why have a slow war of attrition, but and of course it's also mixed with just the strategic calculation that there's a desperate necessity to restore its deterrent. But I think the decapitation strike on Iran as well is something that well, one has to ask, why wouldn't the Americans do this to us? And again, I also heard much. Sorry,
they did 91. They did 91 drones. Is a decapitation strike. Look, Trump was talking with Putin before. Then he goes in with Zelensky, and they were supposed to come out and have a conversation with the press. And as they start that, the drones are flying. So what should have been, I guess, I think they were flying as they're going to come in there, and they've struck the Valdai residency, whether Vladimir is killed or not. They'll have a declaration. Well, issues are taken care of. Look, Americans do this all the time. If you, and this is part of British history, by the way. If you look at Milosevic in the middle of negotiations, they struck his residency in '94, killed part of his family. They do this all the time. You go into negotiations, you better have triple life insurance. You ever read A Song of Ice and Fire, the series, or Game of Thrones is the book series that Game of Thrones on, based off. But they have the Red Wedding, if you're familiar with that, where they wound up killing the Starks during the wedding. Well, Martin wrote that off of historical facts. And when you start looking at historical facts, there are 5 or 6 massacres like this in English and Scottish history over the last 400 or 500 years. This is really part of culture, of the Anglo approach. Yeah, they don't have this whole concept of guest rights. In Russia and many other countries, if somebody comes into your house, you're absolutely responsible for him. If somebody insults him, it's an insult to you. He's your guest under your roof. The Anglos don't have that concept. They don't. They'll bring somebody on a roof and they'll murder them. The Pilgrims even did that. They had a massacre for Indians. They invited them to the feast and then they poisoned them. They killed over 300 and it was considered a great victory against the Red Devils. It's insane when you really start reading actual history. So that they do this, it's not a surprise. But who do you negotiate with? You can't trust the Americans. You can't trust the British. How can you negotiate with people that murder the people that are negotiating? The Israelis do this constantly. I mean, absolutely. This is their modus operandi, is to murder the people they're negotiating. I mean, I don't know how you get out of this concept. The only way you get out of it is you beat the Americans hard enough that they leave. And when the missiles run out, they probably will leave. And a big question if they'll ever come back into the Gulf anywhere near. Because the Gulf states, by the way, have been shown they're not a priority on the totem pole. They're, a matter of fact, they're at the bottom of the totem pole. All the promises, you're in the big club of our empire, we'll protect you, have been blown to nothing. When on the third day, Saudi politicians are screaming, well, why aren't you protecting us? Because there's never anything to protect you with. And you're not priority. Americans aren't priority. Israel is priority. Israel holds the money. Israel holds the Epstein files, obviously enough. Whatever other materials they have over them. Most of the American Congress takes large amounts of money from the Israeli lobby. There you go. He who pays chooses the tune, as the saying goes.
So just to sum up, we will then have a very dangerous situation in the Middle East. I think we're heading in an extremely dangerous situation over the proxy war in Ukraine. I think the anger as well is boiling over as well in Moscow. And as all of this is happening, you turn on the TV saying Chancellor Merz at the Munich Security Conference bragging about the casualties which they have caused in Russia. I mean, it's just the things happening now is so reckless. I mean, if future historians would look at this, they would more or less repeat the rhetoric like, how can we sleepwalk into World War III like this and not change course? It is truly mind-boggling.
I'll say one thing, because I got to go too. I've got another engagement. For the last 2 years, I've been saying this, and I've said this on a lot of Russian television. If we do not strike hard, we will be down to a point where the only way we're going to stop a nuclear world war is by making an example of somebody. More likely, a city like Lvov, which will be wiped out by a Russian nuclear strike as a warning to everybody else. You're next. If this either ends or you're next. Because the Europeans have gotten either passé, or they're ignorant, or they're illiterate. Well, half of Americans are quite literally illiterate. If you read by American statistics, American government statistics, I don't know, 40% of 8th graders can't read in America today. It's insane. The statistics are absolutely insane. 21% are fully literate of the adult population. 32% is partially literate of the adult population. So half the population in the U.S. cannot read and write, cannot do arithmetic. They don't. You can't tell them anything because they don't know anything. But the people they watched maybe too much Hollywood. They've been taught by articles like the Washington Post about 7 years ago posted, you don't really have to worry about a nuclear war. It's not that bad. Sure, if you're in ground zero, you die instantly. Everybody else hunker down for 24 hours. The radiation drops rapidly. Just walk out. Quite literally, this is an article by a major U.S. newspaper. They've lulled the mental state of most of Europe and the West into catatonic level. They don't understand what a nuclear war is. And sooner or later, I think Russia is going to be forced to make an example of at least something before it goes full nuclear everywhere. And what's the easiest thing to do? Probably Lvov or a city around there. Give them 24-hour notice by leaflets to get the hell out of the city, and then drop a nuclear warhead on it. Something like a 75 kiloton on a Zircon missile. That is a Russian tactical. Russia doesn't have any smaller tactical missiles. The Russian tactical is twice the size of Hiroshima, just for reference sake. But like it or not, more likely that's where we're heading to.
As well, many European leaders don't even speak of the nuclear deterrence anymore. They speak of nuclear blackmail, something. Yeah, so it's a very, as I said before, very dangerous place we're going. Anyways, you have to run, so I'll say thank you for taking the time.
No problem. It's always a pleasure, Glenn. I hope I wasn't too dire, and well, actually I do. I hope I was too dire. Maybe it'll shake somebody up and wake them up before it is too late, because we have sleptwalked into World War III. We're already in World War III. Just a matter how bad does it get with the modern technology we have.